Television superstar Steve Wilkos is my guest this week, and of course we have all the news important in Arizona. Welcome to the Mike Broomhead Show.
Well, I got a message, I got a song. Can I get a witness? Tell me what's going on. Show the people I've been away.
Big treat this week. Steve Wilkos joins me in studio. Wait until you meet him. What a good guy he is. It's going to be a great interview. And of course, we're going to have Broomhead's Best and hashtag this. But all the news that's important in Arizona, we call it the sweep. All right, here it comes. We've got the Florida and Ohio primaries coming up. The Republicans had the Super Tuesday 2 along with the Democrats. Trump wins 3 states, Michigan, Mississippi, and Hawaii. Ted Cruz pulls off an upset and he wins Idaho. Marco Rubio not only came in 3rd or 4th, he didn't even win a delegate on the second Super Tuesday. He better hope for a big win in Florida. Now, Hillary, she takes Mississippi by 66 points. 66. Bernie Sanders wins Michigan in a huge upset, but Hillary wins the delegate count. With all that's going on, if you look at the path to the nomination, for the Democrats, it's slanted when you factor in the superdelegates. Hillary Clinton has got almost all of the superdelegates, which means she started with almost an insurmountable lead. Even though Bernie Sanders is raising a lot of money and you have so much going on there, it looks like it's Hillary's to lose. She's already talking like she is the nominee, and we'll see if Bernie Sanders can pull off an upset, but it's looking less and less like he can. Now, on the Democratic debate that happened during the week, Jorge Ramos, this was on the Univision debate. Jorge Ramos asked Hillary Clinton the questions everybody wants to know the answers to.
If you get indicted, will you drop out?
Oh, for goodness, that is not going to happen. I'm not even answering that question.
Well, wait a minute. It's not a stupid question. You're being investigated. But even if you aren't, let me do this. Jorge Ramos, ask any candidate. Donald Trump, if you're indicted, you going to step out of the race? The answer is yes. Same with everybody else. If you're indicted, get out. And Hillary should have said, listen, I'm not going to get indicted, but yes, but she can't. She says it's not going to happen. Justice Department's not saying it's not going to happen, and neither is the FBI. Both have acknowledged an investigation. This should be a bigger story. Not because I'm a Republican, but because the American people have to elect a president. And if one of the nominees is investigated and there may be an indictment, the American people have a right to know those things because we're going to make choices. That would leave Bernie Sanders as the Democratic candidate. But the fact of the matter is, whether it's Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, doesn't matter who it is, if you're being investigated where the Justice Department admits there's an investigation, the FBI is giving immunity to to individuals for testimony, the people have a right to know. And Jorge Ramos asking that question was the right question to ask. Also asked the question of Hillary Clinton about Benghazi. Wanted to know if the mother of one of those that was killed, who was saying Hillary Clinton lied. Hillary Clinton told us that she was going to get the people responsible for the video that caused the attack. Hillary Clinton says, I feel for those people, but she's wrong. She's not wrong. Multiple sources, including the family, say Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and everybody involved with the administration used the talking points that it was an attack caused by a video. It was a spontaneous attack. It wasn't a terrorist attack that was planned. All a lie and all fair game in this. Ohio and Florida coming up. We're going to see what happens on Tuesday. Another big news story. Paul Babu, sheriff of Pinal County, who is running for Congress, which we have to say is maybe a part of this, whether it's political motivation or not, was standing side by side at a podium with the leadership from the Border Patrol Union. This is the organization that represents the Border Patrol agents. At a press conference, the Border Patrol leadership said that the federal government is ignoring high traffic areas. Leadership of the Border Patrol telling officers to patrol areas that are not high traffic areas. Imagine if they say to the police, don't go to these areas where the high crime is. It's ridiculous. But they're saying it's part of the plan for the administration to say that captures are down because they're in the areas of low crossings, so they're coming in contact with less people. All right, the FLDS Church, the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, and I want to give the caveat. I am not a member of the LDS Church. I have a lot of friends that are. The FLDS and the LDS have nothing to do with each other at all. They don't believe the same things at all. Warren Jeffs is the most famous member. The brothers, though, the Jeffs brothers that are not in prison, are now in jail, no bond. There are 2 cities on the border, one in Utah called Hilldale, one in Arizona called Colorado City, and they are both border cities. And they move back and forth. The police force has been seen as a security force for the church. They may disband the police force. They may take all the elected officials and get rid of them. And the reason why is they have been found to be treating non-members differently than members. Civil suits are happening. The fact is, what's happening at the LDS or the FLDS church is that young boys are being excommunicated. They call them lost boys. And young girls, we're talking 12, 13, 14 years old, married off to men that are more than twice, sometimes 3 times their age. It is disgusting. And there's food stamp fraud accusations as well. Finally, a big story in the Valley is Michael Nowakowski. He is a councilman with the city of Phoenix. He was involved, allegedly involved with a land deal. He works for a company, the Cesar Chavez Foundation is his employer. They had won a bid to buy a piece of property in Phoenix, where Michael Nowakowski sits on the city council. It's not right if he had any involvement. He denied it. Emails came out saying that he did have more involvement, but at least his chief of staff, who very quickly resigned, had some things to say with Cesar Chavez Foundation, with the contractor, how to cover this, how to talk about it. And then it came out this week that he had made comments speaking to a group of pastors about gay marriage and the transgender bathroom bill. He said he never thought he'd see the day that that a man and a man could get married. He never thought he'd see the day where a transgendered person could go into the same restroom with his daughter, and he wanted things to go back to the way they used to be. He said he was talking about no prayer at city council meetings. The fact is, Michael Nowakowski was caught speaking out of both sides of his face. In just a few moments, Steve Wilkos joins me in studio. You're going to love this guy. You can catch his show here on AZTV. That's coming up in a moment. Don't go away.
The Mike Broomhead Show is brought to you in part by Cliff Castle Casino Hotel and Sanderson Ford.
Welcome back. We are glad you're here. And Steve Wilkos is here, who is big on this station and across the country. Your show is the fastest growing show in the country, right?
It's, I don't know if it's the fastest growing, but it's one of the fastest, that's for sure.
Your bio says it's the fastest growing show in the country.
Well, then whoever wrote that must be right.
So welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I love being in Phoenix.
This is a perfect time to be here. The weather's good.
Well, it's going to snow in Connecticut tomorrow, so I'm glad I'm here.
We aren't going to have snow. Stick around till next week. We'll have 100-degree temperature.
Oh, I wouldn't mind that either.
I was reading your bio, and what an interesting path you've had. United States Marine Corps. Thank you for your service. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
And a cop for 12 years.
I was a policeman in Chicago for 12 and a half years. And while I was on being a policeman, one of my buddies was walking out of the station 1 o'clock in the morning one night and said, hey, you want to work the Jerry Springer show tomorrow? This was 1994. I said, sure, what do I got to do? You know, you got to wear a suit and tie, you know. And so I thought it was going to be one day. And I went there one day, and it was a Ku Klux Klan show or something. They were worried, so they hired a bunch of off-duty policemen. And I was one of them. And so they just, once in a while when they needed security, they liked me, so they kept calling me back. And they kept asking me, do this, do that. And I said, hey, I'm getting my foot in the door here at TV. It's not bad, it's, you know. And then one day they said, you know, would you mind shaving your head? I said, yeah, I'll shave my head, you know. And
why did they ask you to shave your head?
They said that I would be more, like, I would stand out on the show more.
Well, that's true. Intimidating.
And this was in the 90s, and when nobody shaved their head. And then all of a sudden, like, I started getting fan mail. Like, people were writing in, and that was really what took off for me.
We were talking before we started the interview. You would literally go do Jay Leno or go do a national show and then go do a
Fly
shift.
back to Chicago, and then I'd get back in my squad car at 4 o'clock, you know. So it was a crazy life, and I said nobody was living that kind of life.
What was tougher, the grief you must have taken from other cops, or people you would meet in the street to recognize you when you were going to write them a ticket.
The people in the street, and that's what my bosses were getting mad because I stopped writing tickets because people were like, "Hey, Steve, you know." So if they're a fan of yours, it's hard to write them a ticket, you know. So I wouldn't do it, and so my bosses were getting on me a little bit.
So when did you know that you were going to make that transition? When you knew you?
Well, my wife made it for me. My wife said, "What are you doing?" You know, because I'd come home and my uniform would be covered in blood, you know, because you'd be fighting guys, you know. And my wife was like, "What are you doing?" She goes, you know, we got married, and then she was like, "You know, you're coming home in blood. You're getting beat up." She goes, "Just leave." She goes, "If the show, when the Springer show's over," she goes, "we're not going to live on your policeman salary." She was a TV producer. She was supervisor producer of the Jerry Springer Show at the time. She goes, we're gonna go to New York or LA, and I'm going to be a TV producer. So, and I said, "Yeah, you're right," and I left the job.
So was she working on that show when you were coming in to do security and you met her?
No, I was there first, and she came down from Detroit. She was working on a local station up there, and she came down, and the first time I ever saw her, she walked down stage. She was a young little blonde girl, and I looked at her and I said, "If that's not a man, I'm going to marry her."
And knowing the Jerry Springer Show, you really weren't sure.
Exactly.
Well, good. It worked out really well for you.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that your prior career in law enforcement and the things you had to deal with, is that what kind of led you into the activism, the social awareness? You've been nominated for 3 PRISM Awards, and you really talk about domestic violence and alcohol abuse. Is that really where that comes from?
Well, when they said you're going to get your own show, and they were like, "Well, what kind of show is it going to be?" And I said, "Well, there's only thing that I am. I'm a police officer." And so we said we're going to take the streets of Chicago and put it on stage, and I was going to be a policeman, and I was going to host a show like a policeman. So that's where it came from.
All right, so let me dance into a little bit of the other arena. What do you think of this anti-cop sentiment kind of across the country? How does it affect you after working?
Well, you know, what are you going to do without the police? You know, the same people that complain and want to sue the police will be the first ones to call the police when they're in trouble. You know, policemen have a tough job, and you know, it's split decisions, you know, split-second decisions they have to make. And people, it's easy to judge after the fact, especially in a panic moment. You know, policemen have a very tough job. And I said, like, and I'll never forget when I was on the job myself, my partner, he was just like, "I'm going to quit." And I said, "What are you talking about? You know, we only have 13 more years to go for a pension." And, you know, 13 years is a long time. And he goes, "I'm just tired of it." He goes, "People hate the police." And he goes, "I'm tired of everybody, you know, every job we go to." And you know, most people call the police because they're in a bad situation. So it's not a pleasant experience most of the time if you're dealing with the police. Police are pulling you over, giving you a ticket. So right off the bat, most people, you know, even when I was on the job, people are like, "Oh, I got a ticket from this guy." And I'm like, "Yeah, who cares? I don't want to hear about it."
Right.
You know? So, but hey, you need the police. You have to have police to keep, you know, a civil society. So, you know, what are you going to do?
My youngest brother is a lieutenant in the sheriff's office in my hometown, and he said the attitude now is worse than he's ever seen it. He doesn't feel unsafe as much as he just feels disrespected.
Right.
And you're right, it's a profession where you have to make split-second decisions, life or death for yourself and maybe someone else, and it's easy to second-guess later, but most of the time, 99.9% of the time, people like you, doing the job because you want to help your community.
Most men and women that go to work as a policeman, policewoman, are not going to work to look to strangle somebody, kill somebody. They're going to do their job and go home and be safe. So nobody's, you know, now is there some psychopath? But there's psychopaths in every profession, you know, so you just, what are you going to do? And the police becomes such a national story, a media story, and most other professions don't become, you know, national stories, media stories. So it's, you get the spotlight put on you. It's a tough job. And, but I said, what are you going to do without the police? You have to have them.
And it's funny that you've made such a transition into what you do now, because I think that's why people love your show so much, because you're such a real person. You just got renewed for how long?
Through 2018.
Congratulations. Yeah. That's great stuff.
Yeah, it's good. It's nice to have a little security, and it's so great. TV's wonderful for the fact that here I'm in Arizona. If I was a cop, I wouldn't be in Arizona. And so it's nice. I get to travel around. I get to meet a lot of different people. My kids are, they get to experience a lot of different things because I am in TV. Like I said, I met people in baseball, and my son gets to go on the field, and when he doesn't get to go on the field, he's like, "Dad, how come we're not on the field?" You know? And I'm like, "Hey, it doesn't have everything, So,
well, it's good to meet you. I appreciate you coming down for a little while. You can catch Steve's show here on AZTV 7 weekdays 10 and 11 o'clock, and continued success. I mean, it really is a pleasure to meet you. It's a lot of fun.
Nice meeting
Thanks
you
for
too.
coming down.
Thank you.
Stick around. We'll be right back. Okay, let's talk about a brokered convention. There's a lot of questions about delegates, and in the Democratic Party, super delegates, and there's a difference. First, let's start with that, because the Republican Party doesn't have super delegates. But what the Democrats do is they have people called super delegates that are chosen specifically by the Democratic Party. These super delegates vote independently of what the other voters in their state do. So they can vote for any candidate they want, whenever they want. And they're called a super delegate. Their votes count. So Hillary Clinton entered the Democratic race with almost all of those super delegates, which is why even at the beginning of the primary, when you saw how close each state was, she had hundreds of delegates leads because she has all of those super delegates. But a delegate in general, each state has the representation of delegates. And in Arizona, delegates are elected at a state convention. Here's why it's important to know who the delegates are for party purposes only. You have to get 50% plus one delegate to have the majority at the national convention to earn the nomination. So when all the delegates are convened, all the states are seated by state on the floor of the convention, they'll roll call the state, they'll ask the governor of that state, whoever's leading the delegation, they call them in, and then they have a vote. And at the end of the first vote of all 50 states and all the delegates there from each state, what they do is see if there is a majority. If there's a majority, 50% plus one, that person gets the nomination. If there is not 50% plus one, it then goes to a second vote. So in Arizona, it's a winner-take-all state. So whichever one of the candidates wins Arizona, all of the Arizona delegates vote for that candidate. But on the second vote, each of those delegates can vote for whoever they choose. So it could be Donald Trump. If he wins Arizona, the first vote, every Arizona delegate goes to Donald Trump. On the second vote, though, they can vote any way they want for any of the candidates that are on the ballot. So if there is the majority of the voters that by themselves would vote for Marco Rubio or for Ted Cruz, they can switch and do that. And then that's where it begins to get fun, because let's say Donald Trump goes in leading, but is 10 or 15 delegates shy of a majority. Do you think there will be enough people to swing over to get him over the 50% plus one? That's the question. Now throw this into the mix. The Republicans will have a rules meeting, and they will decide the rules of the convention before the convention starts. Back the last one, when it was in Tampa with Mitt Romney, back in 2012, I was in Tampa, and they made a rule in the Republican Party that you had to win 8 states in order to be eligible to be president, which made the Ron Paul supporters very upset because Ron Paul didn't win any states. Ron Paul didn't win 8 states, so he was not eligible, which meant nobody from the floor could nominate Ron Paul for president. The Ron Paul people were going to shut down the convention over this because it was a rules change that was made right before the convention. Well, now that rule may help Donald Trump. He's won, while we're taping the show today, 15 states. He's already over that 8-vote limit. No one else is. Ted Cruz only has 7. Marco Rubio has 1. Kasich doesn't have any. So if that happens, if they don't change that rule, they could go to convention and the only people eligible may be Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. So look for a rules change. I know this is so much involved, but the fact is, as American people, you think you go to the polls, you cast your vote, and that's how we choose a president or a candidate. There's a lot more involved that goes into a national convention, and this is just a little piece of that. Will we have a majority of 50% plus one going to convention, or will it go to a brokered convention in Cleveland this year? Hopefully that's a little bit of an update. Hope that makes some sense to you. If not, reach out via social media or email me here at AZTV and we'll get it squared away. Coming up in a moment, hashtag this, Broomhead's Best, and we'll close it out. Don't go away. Hope that civics lesson helped a little bit with what we do with delegates at the National Convention. But right now, it's my favorite part of the show, something Arizona, something that should make us all feel good. It's called Broomhead's Best. All right, this week, it's the Phoenix Police Department and their task force, their mental health task force. They have trained a full squad of officers. The goal is to diffuse unpredictable situations, whether it's unpredictable because of mental illness or a mental break, or if it's something that's chemically induced, someone that's drunk or high. What they've done is put together a task force of people that are designed or that are trained tactically to deal with violent situations. But they're also trained in negotiating skills and recognizing crisis intervention needs. So when you have somebody that's had a mental health break, and it's happened in the city of Phoenix, I think they said roughly 10% of officer-involved shootings where people are shooting at the police or weapons are involved have to do with mental illness. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it's only 10%, but that's a big number of people that may be able to be talked down as opposed to using physical force and stopping deadly situations for police, but also for individuals that may have had a mental health break. Now, it's important to recognize that not everyone that is suffering from a mental illness is dangerous, just like people that are suffering from a disease aren't going to die or aren't contagious. But in situations where people are in need of mental health care, when officers show up, should it be one or two police officers that have two choices? Either you engage and use physical force, or you back out and that person may hurt themselves. This team of officers, one of the only ones in the country that are put together specifically to deal with mental health needs. I think it's a fantastic step. I think the Phoenix Police, as usual, are on the cutting edge with the rest of the nation, and they're going to be looked upon for the standard of how to do this. So congratulations. This week, Phoenix Police and this task force is Broomhead's Best. Now, we go to something funny that's burning up the internet. We call it #this. Oh, Hillary. She had a rough week. She was at a Detroit coffee shop. We're calling this #FeelTheBurn. Why? Listen to this. She goes to the coffee shop and, just like she does every day, she just stops in for coffee and just chats with people because she's such a people person. And she starts chatting with the customers, and then they put out a picture on Instagram of the coffee shop. A, she gets the name of the coffee shop wrong. And B, the girl in the picture commented on Instagram and said, that's me in the picture, and I support Bernie Sanders. Please take the picture down. So they took the picture down, and then the coffee shop said Hillary must have been #FeelingTheBurn. So this week, it is #FeelTheBurn. Check it out. Hillary Clinton, not a good week on social media at all. All right, we've got just a few minutes left. We're going to close things out momentarily, so make sure you stick around for the final part of the show. We'll be right back.
The Mike Broomhead Show is brought to you in part by Cliff Castle Casino Hotel and Sanderson Ford.
A couple things before we close it out. First of all, a big congratulations to ASU graduate Brock Osweiler getting paid. Becomes a quarterback of the Houston Texans, $72 million with 37 guaranteed. You better write a check to your old alma mater. You know what I'm saying? They need some help with that new stadium. So, and a big special thank you to Steve Wilkos. What a great guy. You can see his show right here on AZTV weekdays at 10 and 11 a.m. What a good guy he is. And I was really happy to have him here in studio. I really enjoyed my time with him. We're working on some things here. If you've got some suggestions for the show, you can email me here. Find us on social media, Instagram. You can find us on Twitter as well. Go to the website, aztv.com. But we're working on Luke Air Force Base. We may be going out there, the new F-35s, and learn a lot more about what happens at Luke Air Force Base. Before the month is over, Senator John Kyle will be with me here in studio. So he's a great, former Senator John Kyle, a great guy. So those are just some of the things that we're working on here on the Mike Broomhead Show, and I'd love to hear some of your suggestions of what you'd like to see around the state of Arizona that we do here on the show. So those are just a few things. And before we get out of here, learn about what's happening in government. I know this delegate thing is a tough thing to worry about, but it's going to happen very soon. Have a great week, everyone. We'll be back next Saturday. God bless.
Get more of Mike Broomhead on Facebook, Twitter, and of course weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on News Talk 550 KFYI.